Well, I almost brought my Nerf gun for this one.
What? Oh.
But I threw away my shot.
Oh.
And that's how we're starting this one.
Wow.
The worst one ever.
I'll say. Okay, why don't you give me a beat? Good morning, afternoon, and or evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning back in and hanging out with us. As always, we are the Genesius guys. I'm Nick. I tried to be creative here.
No, that was good. Filling in for Kyle, I'm Seth. I'm sorry, I just had to do it.
And I'm John.
And we are three Catholic dudes who love to talk about movies. This is the Genesius podcast. So I want to take us back in time a few weeks.
Okay.
So we recorded an episode in front of a live studio audience. Do you guys remember that?
We did, yeah.
It was like it was in another show.
Oh my, wow. This is what happens when you record on a Wednesday evening.
Nick's going to hate me by the end of this. He's going to challenge me to a duel.
I just might. Anyway, so listeners and viewers, if you don't remember, we gave prizes for bingo cards that we filled out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And our guest today not only got to pick today's movie, if you want to call it that, but she's also our guest for today. So Abigail, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. So what was the motivation, I guess, behind picking what we're doing today?
I was just thinking about what to do, and it just kept coming to mind. It's something I really enjoy, and I thought there would be a lot of good things to talk about.
Gotcha. Sorry,
Yeah.
John, I couldn't see her face. Your microphone was
So now it's a problem. You can't see somebody's face. Well, not when I can't see Nick's face. Okay.
So it was just something that was on your mind a lot to do?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a good choice.
It definitely gets stuck in your head.
It's a really good choice. I was listening to it for basically the whole past day. It's one of the. Should we actually introduce what it is we're doing?
Well, Seth,
What?
why couldn't Kyle make it today?
Well, the price of his love wasn't a price I was willing to pay. So he denied being on this show. And yeah.
Even though he got a 30-second cameo in January.
Yes. The man has the best cameo appearance in all of fiction. So yeah.
So anyway, we are talking about not quite a movie, but the musical Hamilton,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which technically could qualify as a movie because it is on Disney Plus.
That's true. This is the second stage production we've done.
Yes, but
yeah. But this one, all you guys can watch.
it's true. Yeah,
true.
you can all watch this one.
Now, question, Abigail, did you ever see this live?
No, I haven't. I would love to see it live. It was just in Minneapolis, and I missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have a very unique story with Hamilton. Like, my relationship with this show has been very strange because I had a roommate and a friend of mine in college who consecutively became obsessed with it. And so one of them got obsessed with it, was just playing the songs all the time, always kind of like singing it, super catchy. And then right as their interest started to like wane and sort of ebb off, then the other person really got into it. And so for like at least a couple of months of my college life, Hamilton was just something I heard all of the time. And I never saw the show live because it was actually really difficult to get the tickets. Do you remember
Yeah.
if you ever tried to see this on its initial run?
So
Well, even tickets here, like I looked into it when they came. They were like very expensive.
Wow.
So not to one up you, Seth, but I am very much 7 years late when it comes to Hamilton.
Oh.
Well, but it came out in 2020. I mean, at least the movie.
The movie did, yes.
Had you not seen it yet?
I had not seen it.
Oh,
I had not.
Wow.
I had not even listened to the soundtrack.
You have a really unique perspective then.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to
So-
be
Wait,
curious.
do you know who Lin-Manuel Miranda is? before?
I do, and I have opinions.
Do you call him Manuel?
It's Lin-Manuel Miranda, by the way.
Sorry.
Lin Manuel.
Manuel.
That's so Minnesota.
I think like
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Emmanuel is what I think. So,
For being a Scotty, you sure brought on a Minnesota spin to that name.
Oh goodness. Now, so this is really interesting. Do we? I know we don't have box office figures for Hamilton. Do we have like Broadway box office figures?
I didn't even think of that.
well,
that was,
they
that was-
won a Tony, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they win awards for this show?
They had to have won at least one
Probably.
Tony.
I have to check is there Hamilton box office? I have to look this up because I'm curious to see what source.
So I had listened to parts of the soundtrack, kind of through the years, because this came out when I was in college. Like it was introduced when I was in college, and I'm one of those weirdos that that for some cases, not all cases, but for some cases, when something uber popular like this comes out, I kind of just shut down.
Yeah.
And then, and I honestly had no desire to watch it, but I was willing to do this for the podcast. And so it's really funny. So, Kat Jackson, this is your shout out. I hope you were listening to this episode, especially because I told you should. But my friend Kat and I were talking about, we were talking about musicals for some reason, but like she was telling me about Hamilton, and I'm like, oh, I'd never seen it. And she was like, what? How do you never seen it? And Kat, please correct me if this story is not accurate. I am very much paraphrasing in all the ways. So, but she's like, oh, Nick, you should watch it sometime. And I'm like, I'm sure I'll get around to it one day. And then like a couple days later, I hear Abigail wants to watch Hamilton for the podcast. And I immediately texted her and I'm just like, so I'm going to watch. So I have to watch Hamilton. Someone requested it for the podcast. So I probably did have a unique experience.
I had this interesting where I actually heard all of the like similar, I guess, to Seth, where I heard the music before I actually ever saw it.
So, okay. So I have one issue, and I mean, like, that's probably for most people, but I personally don't love listening to the soundtrack before watching the movie. That was my experience with Frozen. And I hated the movie before I even watched it.
Yeah.
And then I watched it and I'm just like,
Well, you
was okay.
know what, Nick? Sometimes you can just let it go.
Did that catch?
I don't know if we heard it on the podcast, but I heard it and it was amazing. So actually, the figure that I looked up is that by 2020, and I don't know how accurate this is because it was a random source, was 500 million was the number that they put out on a $12.5 million stage production budget. Who knows what the budget is considering all the touring aspect of it and all of that.
Yeah.
But
So to run through a few more stats, directed by Thomas Kail, written and I guess composed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, came out on Disney Plus on July 3rd, 2020, but it was originally performed in June of 2016.
yeah.
So this doesn't have a USCCB consensus, which is I guess not really a first for us, but kind of a first.
Well, yeah, it's not really like a movie.
Yeah,
So.
but Rotten Tomatoes did score this.
Mm-hmm.
Critics gave it a 98 and the audience gave it an 89. And the consensus says, look around at how beautifully Hamilton shines beyond Broadway and at how marvelously Thomas Kail captures the stage show's infectious energy.
Including some spit from one of the actors.
Yes. one of the best characters in the show.
King George.
Yes.
Did you not? Okay. There's a scene
I don't
where
know
he has
if I
like
caught
a
it.
giant piece of spit.
Yeah,
on his
so
mouth.
I'll have to show you this section later on.
Yeah.
But when they do the
It's pretty
close up,
gross.
when they do the close up on his face, you can see like the spittle coming out of his
That's so
mouth.
funny.
because
But
he's
the
just-
thing is, like, Broadway actors do that a lot. You just normally
Yeah.
can't see it because you're so far away. But like with the camera, it's like right.
He was undeniably the funniest character in the entire show.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
There's no question.
I was like watching him to see if he blinked because I kept hearing like he doesn't blink. And I was watching and watching. And I'm like, he literally isn't blinking. Either I'm just blinking when he does, or he literally doesn't blink. I don't know how he does it.
And he wears like his costume is so ginormous that it's like got to be really hot.
It's like
too.
Queen Amidala in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to check who do you remember who plays
I
the
think
king?
it's the same guy who plays Olaf in Frozen.
Yeah. Jonathan Groff.
That's Josh Gad.
Josh Gad is Frozen. Jonathan Groff is King George, and holy crap, he gives off psycho energy in that role.
Okay. If this says anything, so I listened to the soundtrack like a couple of years ago, and then I watched it recently. And then like I was kind of obsessed where I listened to like a lot of the different like random Easter eggs and stuff. So he was on the original cast and then left to go do, I think it was Frozen 2. But they had him come back strictly for this recording.
Okay, that's good.
And like, so the person who was playing him stepped down so that he could come in just for like when they were doing the recordings of this as King George. He just like stepped right back into the role. And then like,
I mean,
so it's kind of crazy. Like they made it come together to be the,
I suppose if you are associated with a role that enough, then I suppose you can probably step into it just like riding a bike. It's like Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker. You just jumped right back into it.
Or the Joker, right?
That's true too. Yeah.
It's scary how quickly he can just jump back into that.
It's scary how the animated Joker and Luke Skywalker, like if you were like lived under a rock, then you would never guess that those were the same actor. Like he's that good.
Yeah, it's impressive. But speaking of like being matched with your role, let's talk about Lin-Manuel for a second.
Oh,
because you know it's interesting when you think about a
I'll let you go first.
contemporary. Yeah, thank you. When you think about like a contemporarily like professional vocalist, Lin-Manuel Miranda doesn't necessarily come to mind. He is like if a normal person with their own very unique voice really knew how to sing with it, because obviously he's good at his voice.
but clearly like you can tell of the actors in it that like he's not like the professional actor as much as the other one.
Yeah, but he definitely has that like as the person who wrote it, and I imagine has the real vision for how that character is portrayed. He really nails it. And once I kind of heard that he wasn't going to be in the stage performance anymore, like any interest I had seeing it live just dropped. Because to me, at least, that's his performance is probably as close you're going to get to how it was intended as possible. I haven't heard or seen whoever they brought in after him to play that character, how they sound, but it's just so tied to him and his performance that I can't imagine it any other way. It's like Wicked, like Idina Menzel as Elphaba, right? I can't imagine any other person in that role.
So, okay, so like I said at the beginning, I have opinions about Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Interesting. Okay.
And many of them are hot takes. The first one being, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is grossly overrated. Grossly overrated. Now, I will admit, this is his best work. For sure.
Oh, yeah.
This was like a labor of love for him.
Right.
Yeah.
It took like a very long time for him to actually get this like to production.
So the reason I wanted to cut in when you said like comparing him to Hamilton with Idina Menzel and Elphaba is because and the reason I'm not this kind of sells my point on why I'm not so high about Lin-Manuel Miranda, because one of the biggest things, and this did kind of affect my score for this movie, but it's really obvious from the get-go that he wrote the musical to put himself in the starring role. And I despise that.
Oh, you don't you feel like it's vanity. Maybe.
Yes.
Oh,
that's
interesting.
why that's a big reason why I dislike him, is because like whenever he writes, and like Moana 2 is another, it's not as egregious of an example as this, but like he writes music for a movie and then he just has to put himself in there as like it's like people have to know that he's in it because he wrote the music. It's a little, I mean, you could also make the argument of like, you know, like Gareth Edwards putting himself in Rogue One, but that's different because like he was in there for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like Peter Jackson, who puts himself in every movie that he's in too.
And I don't have a problem with directors inserting themselves in movies
with like
Hitchcock.
Hitchcock, yeah.
So I don't have a problem with directors putting themselves in movies. Like I think that's a pretty common thing. I do have an issue if they are doing it to put themselves at the center of attention. Like they're just like, I wrote this so I could do it.
With Hamilton, though, that's almost his character. Like he's trying to be the center of attention. He's like, I don't want to brag, but I amaze and astonish.
This
like,
only proves my point.
Well, but like even Hamilton's character, like he wrote himself into becoming as good as he could, like right, because that's how he moved off the island was because he wrote to be able to go get an education.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily have. I agree that it has a certain look about it when someone does that. I think their conduct outside of the role really speaks as to why they do that. So, and I don't know enough about him outside of his performance as Alexander Hamilton to understand if that really is ego at play. Because in a lot of ways, you can, in fact, it probably is in your best interest as an artist to create the material that works best for your strengths. Mm-hmm. And so if he wrote it for someone completely different than himself, would he have been as emotionally invested in the project to create it at the quality that he did?
Do you know any, like I swear it took him like over a decade to actually like write and
it took a very
get
long
this
time.
to production, to people actually wanting to bring it to Broadway, because like he performed different parts of it for like he performed it for Obama at one point, like one of the songs when he was still working on it.
Yeah.
And like he had to go into like, they didn't get it like initially on Broadway. They had to like do it at a kind of like more local level and then like move it up.
Yeah.
To where it finally got to being this.
Usually happens? Isn't that usually how it goes?
Unless you're like a really well known
I suppose, yeah.
production, and then
Like
they just
Back
like,
to the Future, the musical, I think immediately hit the London stage.
okay.
See, that's a musical that if it came to Minneapolis, I'd be like, I am going to see this no matter what it takes.
But I honestly think like I think he's done something that hasn't been done before, that it'd be really hard to do, to lead a charge and be as invested if you weren't like actually in it.
I suppose.
From my perspective, but because like this is like, I mean, pardon the pun, but like revolutionary, like how he brought like hip hop into Broadway is something that's like, as far as I know, like not really been done, at least to this level.
So I'll give him that. Like it's, hip hop in a musical was jarring. Like it wasn't. Not necessarily I should say not always in a bad way. There are times where I'm like, okay, like the way I described it when I was telling Kat my thoughts on it was the music is very good. I will not argue that it's very good music. The style with the story it was trying to tell just threw me off. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like it does work. I just don't necessarily know how I feel about it working.
Well, what I find really fascinating in this is that like each character who's like the lead in each of the songs has like a slightly different style of music that is used for them. Like specifically King George is very like
regal,
normal Broadway kind of
regal.
Like
yeah.
Yeah. And like Alexander Hamilton's always kind of like more of the hip hop kind of end. of like it's a lot more rapping and the cleverness like kind of his character.
Well, and-
whereas for instance like George Washington is kind of like a little bit of a middle ground between the two.
Yeah,
'Cause
he has a more
like,
formal style.
Yeah.
I never actually thought about it like that.
Well, and one thing that I also noticed as I was listening to, here's the thing with listening to the sound, I did not actually have to rewatch the stage performance because listening to the soundtrack gets you about 90% of the content of the music.
Yeah, there's just like a little bit that isn't included.
Yeah, and so when I was listening to it earlier today, there's a bit at the end where they're asking Hamilton who he's supporting, if he's supporting Jefferson or Burr for president.
Yeah, yep.
And his response, when he finally does respond, is in the style that was attributed to Jefferson's character.
Oh,
Ooh.
And so that's how you could actually tell who he's going, if you didn't already know the history, right? The
Right.
moment he starts to respond, and it's in the style of how Jefferson would express himself in the musical, you realize he's going to support Jefferson. So they really intelligently place these themes. It's almost like a leitmotif in a sense, but it's for the musical.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
That's a really good catch.
That is a really good observation.
one of the things that like blows my mind though is that like I think like you may say that like Alexander Hamilton's like the lead role, it's Miranda's like star jewel or whatever, but like my gosh, the guy who plays Lafayette and Jefferson.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Like it's
That
just
is-
like mind blown how fast he can like.
the
he
actor
raps and sings in a French accent. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that
how
was
the
okay. Yeah, that
like
yeah,
really
David,
fast.
yeah, the
too.
actor is David Diggs.
Yeah.
He's
astonishing.
he recently voiced Sebastian in the live action Little Mermaid adaptation.
Okay.
It's it's okay. Like I didn't see the movie, but like I watched clips. It's okay. And he's also, this is the thing that's even weirder. He's rumored to be Ben Grimm in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie for Marvel Studios.
It's not that.
That's the
I
thing.
feel like that would be like almost like Hercules Mulligan would make more
that
sense.
it's like when I first, I mean, it's rumored. It's nothing's official yet, but I remember when I first heard that, I'm like, that seems like a strange casting choice.
Well, so anyway, so Marvel tangent.
Marvel tangent.
But supposedly Adam Driver is also going to be Mr. Fantastic.
See, but
which
I
is
can
kind
see,
of weird.
No,
Like, I don't know.
That feels more actually. That feels more believable. I think Driver would be even better as Doctor Doom.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, he could bring that emo Kylo Ren. Why did I always say Kyle Ren?
Kyle
Ren.
That's now our roommate's designation.
That's what
Kyle.
Kyle is actually doing right now.
Yeah. He's reporting to Emperor Snoke.
But also
Sorry,
like
that's
like Aaron Burr
Ooh.
did a really good job
Yeah.
too. I don't know
Man.
that.
Leslie Odom Jr.'s, I think is the name of the.
Man.
Is that who that is?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
double check.
He was in Murder of the Orient Express. He was in that movie.
Yeah, Leslie Odom Jr.
Yeah. I did not
is-
recognize him.
Yeah,
But
he's
like
excellent.
if I would say like I think they did a better job than Miranda did with their characters.
I agree.
Like,
and I'm
they
not
were
and I'm not
just-
saying that because of my opinions on Lin-Manuel Miranda. I genuinely agree.
I do think this is something that like I don't think is always shown though, is it's like it's bringing Broadway to like the everyday person. Because like I feel like I don't know.
They did
like
that. They did
my
that a
parents
lot.
aren't going to go to Broadway and watch a music like that's not.
Well, they
that's
did
not
that
really
a
what they
lot
would
during
do, but-
COVID.
Mhm.
Because I remember while the shutdown was going on, my family would sit around and watch musicals on their TV because they're just like, well, we can't do this for a while, so like, go ahead and stream it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hamilton was kind of a COVID thing for my family
Yeah.
a bit. Like we kind of got into it around that time when it came out on Disney Plus in 2020, and my sister got into it first, if I recall, and then my little brother, who's 16, he has like, I shouldn't call him little, but
Is he
brother who's
is he
16.
taller than you?
Yeah.
Then he's your younger brother.
My
I just want to
younger brother.
clarify.
He has like, we were listening to it in the car on like a long drive, driving to see some of my other siblings in North Dakota, and we had the soundtrack on, and he was like, I think he has the whole thing memorized, including all the bits by Lafayette.
Oh,
and he can rap it all.
Can he do this? Can he
Impressive.
rap in the French accent?
Not really, but
Oh, that would be really impressive. Not that is already impressive. That'd be even more impressive if he did it in a French accent.
at least I don't remember. Maybe he was trying to do a French accent, but I thought it was just impressive he could do it that fast.
That is, yeah.
I want desperately to actually find like a Blu-ray or a DVD or some kind of digital download of that recorded performance. One of the things that really struck me about it, just apart from the musical for a second, because I want to talk about the
story.
Not the story, but the actual recording that they did.
Yeah.
It is impressive how they made a stage performance so much like a movie.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. Like all of the camera cutting, you get really close in on the. I've actually filmed.
So they actually just random side note. So they did like it in front of a live audience, but they also did a recording where there isn't the live audience, so that they could get like on stage and like get the close-ups and
Oh
stuff.
wow!
So
Yeah,
it's not just like one show.
That
they
is
did.
I have heard of theater companies actually doing that.
Well, and I mean, I've filmed actually like a stage production or two where we're trying to get like the multi-angle and stuff like that, and that I didn't realize that they did that. That makes total sense, and it's genius. Because the result is an incredibly watchable recording of a performance. And especially since they were able to tailor make it so that nothing's happening out in the crowd, the audience, that ever distracts. Like there's no one's cell phone going off.
Yeah.
There's no one throwing a tomato on the stage or something.
That would be really funny, actually.
But you do get the audience. It would be, but you do get the audience reactions that are appropriate for each individual character. Right.
Yeah.
Like you get the moments where everyone recognizes like Lin-Manuel steps forward and, you know, Alexander Hamilton. And everyone's like, "Wah!" You know, they just freak out.
The funniest one was the King George, and then also Thomas Jefferson, David Diggs. He got a really good reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did such a good job with that recording.
What was it though? Like immigrants get the job done.
Yeah.
Is that the,
Immigrants get
That's
the
a
job done.
fantastic line.
So I wrote down a few quotes that I thought were worth bringing up. Yeah. I mean, you may have written some of these down too, but and these are just things that like struck me and really I think were really good themes for the story. Because the story, I had me being not a history in real life. Like when we talk about Nick, how much of a history buff are you? I'm like, well, if it's like Star Wars or MCU, I could tell you a few things, but real life history, probably not. Shows how much I paid attention in high school social studies. Anyway,
well, do you know, like he came up with the idea
I was
that
better at math. Okay. I was in calculus and not AP US history for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not a huge history buff either, but like I do watch like watching the History Channel on occasion. But he actually he got the idea from like reading the biography of Hamilton. Like,
Yeah, it was
like, a
inspired
book.
by a 2004 biography.
Yeah, and it shows because I was very intrigued by the story. But yeah, some quotes I wrote down were, "He will never be satisfied. Isn't this enough? I'm not throwing away my shot. Who lives, who dies, who tells her story." Those profoundly stuck with me as I was watching this.
Yeah.
So supposedly like the actual like Satisfied song is very like, I don't know, that's like one of the peaks of the movie, I think, where it's like it's so interesting like how they so like being in theater and doing like stuff with the stage and like just how they use that and how like the acting like they go back in time, they're like kind of thing.
That
like,
was
it was
I
so
wrote
cool.
that. Yeah,
I don't think
when they like rewound that, I was like, as I was watching it, I'm like, okay, that's pretty gnarly.
It's impressive.
Or when King George says, "I'm so blue," and he stamps his foot and the light goes from red to blue. That was probably the hardest I laughed watching this.
But I don't know. I would agree though, by far, just like from an entertainment value, I think King George is like whenever he came out, it was just like there was going to be something hilarious.
He's so like he sings the same dang song every time with slight variation, but it's like it never gets old. It's so good.
Well, and his
I wonder
reactions are
how
so
like
good.
are like British, if there is anybody from Britain that's actually honest, like thinks of King George, but he is
So-
just like
They perform it in London,
Mhm.
which is kind of strange to me.
They're probably just like, who is this? They
I
hear
think-
King George and they're like, it's close.
but isn't it like, okay, this is just speculation, but like, or what I've heard is like, do Britons even like King George? Like, is he like, was he kind of just weird? Even
I don't know. The impression I get is not a real positive one, but I don't know. I
'Cause
don't know
I-
enough about English history.
yeah, I heard that like he just kind of had. I mean, obviously he created enough of an issue that America went to revolution against him.
He was
Or
not,
revolt.
I think if I recall, like later in his life, he kind of went a little like crazy.
Mhm.
That definitely shows in this music.
Yeah, it was supposed to hint at it, but it's very
I
obvious.
loved when he would sing his bits just like straight, like maniacally straight face. He'd go like la da 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 da, or however the heck that's supposed to go.
No, that's exactly
and
it.
then I'll
Was it
send
really?
a battalion to remind you of my love. I will kill your family because of my love.
I
And you're
will
like,
kill your friends and family. Just relishes for a
Oh,
moment the
man.
thought of ending lives. It definitely
but
is like
to
an
remind
audience
you
song.
of his love. That's what he
Obviously.
will go. The
I'll,
extent
kill,
that he will go
I kill
to.
you because I love you.
Kyle, please don't kill my friends and family.
Kyle Ren.
Kyle Ren. Yeah. Perfect.
But honestly, like I've listened to that song. There was one day where I probably listened to that like 12 times in a row. I don't know why I like that song.
Because it's goofy.
I definitely did that a little bit on repeat. Actually, this is really interesting. You probably don't have a track that you've listened to on repeat from this musical.
Not from this music.
Yeah, because you just started, you just learned about it basically.
Yeah.
John, is there one that you repeat? And then Abigail, is there one that you repeated?
Yeah. You'll be back. I think
Okay.
it's- yeah.
Okay.
I have multiple favorites. Satisfied, I do really love.
Yes,
I
that
think
is
that
very
one
good
is
too.
brilliant. And then I also like, it's more of like the classic like show tune, but it's Quiet Uptown.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That one was beautiful.
It is.
Burn
beautiful.
is
It's
also
a major
very, like,
turning
moving,
point,
too.
and-
Like, because both of them, because like that's right after his son dies, right? Like
Yeah.
they move uptown.
Yeah. I really love so I think Renee Lee Scoldberry also has a beautiful voice. She
played
Angelica.
Angelica? Okay.
Angelica.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I would be remiss if we didn't mention Philippa Sue as
Yeah.
Eliza.
Oh my God.
Yep.
She was probably, I would say, one of the best performances. And for some reason, her performance stood out to me above almost all the other ones.
Oh.
Well, yeah.
like even like listening to it today, it's like Burn is so like emotional in that song. Where you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, it's interesting because obviously women of the time didn't have a lot of agency.
Mhm.
And so to kind of have to really the fact that this show really highlights the ways in which that can be shown. I was discussing this with my girlfriend last night actually because I was talking about doing this recording, and it was really interesting to discuss that aspect of the show with her, and how like it really shows how she can exercise her agency as a woman at that time, not really having been able to do much else. And her character is very much swept up along with all of this, being Alexander's wife and kind of just having to deal with the fact that he cares more about his job and his legacy in a lot of ways than his family, at least as he's portrayed in here. In the musical, one aspect that's really interesting, I can't remember because I was doing some research after learning about this musical. My understanding of his relationship with Angelica is that it was a friendship, a really good friendship, but there are people who have wondered if there was a romantic involvement, and this musical really plays up that aspect to bring some tension to the whole idea.
So there are possibly some historical inaccuracies.
Yeah. There
There are many
there's
historical
some.
inaccuracies.
Yeah,
Like I said, I don't know the story enough, so I don't know what's accurate and what's not.
It's somewhat loose. I mean, it roughly follows his
Did it cut
life
loose,
and
footloose?
character, but like, but there are creative liberties taken, and
Yeah. I mean,
events that
it's
are
definitely like a
condensed
historic
and stuff
fiction.
like that. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
like they make it more dramatic in some areas, and but I think honestly though, the just like I love how he brought like, okay, normally like one of the things I would say is an issue for me is like if they kind of like, okay, like obviously all these people are white, like in real life.
I was wondering when this was going to come
but
up.
like I actually really liked how they like brought the two kind of like I don't know anything about hip hop. I'm just making speculation.
Sure.
But like how he brought the two together, I think was like out of reference for both.
I think,
which I don't think is always done.
so I think I agree with what you're saying. I think if this were a movie, I don't think that would fly nearly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. So like we are in, as far as cinema and pop culture today goes, we're very much about diversity to a huge fault in many ways. Cause I think this really started to show a few years ago where like the live action Lady and the Tramp on Disney Plus, which I only got halfway through because it was awful.
I've never even bothered to watch it.
I wouldn't. Just watch the original. It's so much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Hashtag all of the Disney remakes. Sorry. Go ahead.
not all of them. Not all of them.
Most of them.
Most of them. I can condone that. Anyway, so like one of the more interesting casting choices, and this is like, and you can tell it leans a little more toward a Broadway style, because with Broadway, like you kind of have to be a little more flexible.
Yeah, because you want somebody who can like sing the part really well.
Right. Yeah. So but like with movies, especially when you set when the setting is in our world at a different point in time, historical accuracy, like cultural accuracy, is really important.
Well, yeah, because like if you're trying to make like Abe Lincoln or something, right? Like the movie Lincoln.
Right.
Like you're like, yeah, I mean, if you're trying to be as historically accurate as possible, you should try to make them like.
So like
as close
casting
as
like
possible to
Matt
it.
Damon in a Great Wall of China movie with a bunch of Chinese people is a weird decision.
Wait. You mean Abraham Lincoln's Zombie Slayer was not historically accurate? But Abigail, did you know this was a thing? They made a zombie movie with Abraham
I
Lincoln.
still can't believe that
I feel
exists.
Like I've heard of it.
It's like Pride and Prejudice and zombies. I can't believe that's a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but like my point is, it's like for a movie. I think that if that Hamilton as a movie with like this kind of casting just would not work.
Well, I think it would if it was because that's kind of what Hamilton is, and that's kind of like the style of it.
Yeah. I think what I was kind of actually getting at was I think he's actually trying to address a problem that's happening like in society, right? Like, okay, right. There's a lot of statues and stuff that like people are trying to demolish because they're like, oh, they were slave owners. Like, how can we ever look up to Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves, right? Like that's like that's like a main thing. So what I saw as like what he's trying to do with this of like melding the two cultures is that's like we can look and see and relate to them even though they're like had owned slaves or even though they had done problems in the past, but like you can still learn something from them, and they were still trying to work for everybody. Like we were trying to create a new nation for everyone. But yeah, I mean, there's some setbacks to it, but like, how can we relate common people's struggles today with like the struggles that they had back then?
I guess,
and like, what are some overlaps? Like, for instance, like
Sure.
that was the whole point of focusing on the character of Hamilton, I think, because he is an immigrant. Like he was from the Caribbean islands, right? And then like moved to America to like try to make something for himself, which is like the American dream and what they're trying to relate to that. And like, how can we bring people who are like normally go to like Broadway shows to people that normally listen to hip hop are probably not in the same circles. It's like, how do we bring those two together and everybody be like, hey, the founding fathers actually did something for us? and are actually something that like to look up to. Yeah, they have their issues, like owning slaves. That's a huge issue. But what can we learn from them?
Well, and I'll also point out, right, there's a whole side of the American Revolution and colonial life in terms of relations to and violence against Native Americans that goes wholly unaddressed in this musical because it's not the focus.
Yeah.
So
they did address like the slave owning though, like at a couple of points.
Yeah, not a lot, but yes.
It's there enough, I think, to sort of recognize its presence among the diverse cast that they had, which I think there's supposed to be some irony in this, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's
Well, even the whole stage.
See, that's probably more believable that there was intentional irony.
yeah, I think that's
in
honestly
some
a
of
good
this
chunk
casting choices.
I had a thought that left the train station.
But the point I guess I'm trying to make is like, again, with stage productions, like you kind of have to be a little more flexible.
Yeah. Mhm.
But like I think with diversity, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like I think if you have the talent and the chops to create art on stage or screen, like use those gifts.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. But especially in something, again, set in our world at a different time, you have to be really careful how you go about it. Right? Like I think having Thomas Jefferson be a black man in a stage musical, especially with this style, is very different than if you were telling the same story on screen. It's less believable. It's less believable on screen because, like, with a movie, you are trying to like reflect reality and have some
movie.
I mean, it depends.
Right, but like, I mean, like, because like, I mean, fantasy and animated movies, like, obviously a little.
Well,
I don't know.
but
If
there's
that's the
some
point you're
people
trying to
who
make.
like, well, pretty much anything that Tarantino does. It's just like, we're going to take a historic narrative and just go.
Yeah, we're going to stretch it like taffy, basically.
Okay, but sorry, I'm not trying to like force my point or anything, but like,
No, I understand what you mean. Like, if they're trying to do something extremely accurate to what actually happened in real life, it is weird to add diversity in there. For
right,
no-
I think you've made your point.
but
okay, yeah, and like, sure, like as much as we like crap on Captain Marvel, the movie, because there's good reason to crap on it. The one thing I do commend it for is that, like, because it's set in the 90s, and like it feels like you are in the 90s. That's also kind of what I'm trying to get across here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like for just like, does it feel like you're in that time period? Yeah, I mean, that definitely would.
Which in a movie you have to pay closer attention to, whereas in a stage musical, you kind of get to play in the sandbox a little bit more loosely.
Well, even like the music, like for instance, like the fact that it's a musical, it's unrealistic. Like people aren't just like breaking out into song all the time.
I don't know, John. I think I could do it right now.
But like, I just think like the overlaps are really fascinating. Like for instance, just like I thought it was really funny, the like rap battle between the like politicians.
Oh, yeah,
Which is,
staging the
that
debates
makes
is
so much sense.
That was
Yeah.
great.
Like, that's great.
It's like really entertaining. I do not like politics at all, but I am so entertained by the cabinet battles.
So
Yeah.
what we're thinking is we need a Donald Trump Joe Biden rap battle.
That would be amazing.
I mean, here's the thing: epic rap battles of history has already been doing this for like a decade. So, ERB, you're ahead of the curve.
The question is, who do we cast as Trump and who do we cast as Biden?
Oh, the same guy. Nice, like it's either Nice Peter or Epic Lloyd.
Yeah.
But just the same person.
The same one.
They've been doing that for a long. They've had that happen.
But
Snoop Dogg is Joe Biden.
I think one. Okay.
That just put a phenomenal image.
And
on
MC Hammer as Donald Trump. That would be so entertaining.
Anyway, but one thing I do think I really commend Miranda for is just like, he is so clever with like the way that like the lyrics in the songs and stuff. I commend him.
I did watch it.
Wholeheartedly
I
for
did
that.
watch this with subtitles because I wanted to be able to follow along with what
Yeah.
was being
It's
said.
he gives so much info so quickly, and it's just like wow,
Yeah.
and it's like done rhythmic-y.
It is. It's
it's like-
very. It is very well written.
Yeah.
He's got bars. Honestly, it's fantastic.
There's
to
a
listen to.
reason why like Disney was like, hey, how about you make another movie, and like you don't know about, or we don't talk about Bruno is like exploded.
Still haven't seen it.
But
Yeah, he's had his hits, right, that are really fantastic. And
like I think this is his crowning jewel though. Like,
Oh,
I think it's like
Oh, undeniably.
magnum
it's
opus.
so yes, yeah.
But
But did you have
what were some of
Yeah,
your thoughts? Because
let's-
I know you've got a whole page of notes that we didn't get to.
I ranted a lot. I think it's your turn.
There's so much to talk about. Like we didn't even have banter.
A big thing I really like about Hamilton is how like all the musical themes weave together. So like for one example would be like how Eliza has the song like Helpless, so she's like helpless like against like falling in love with Alexander, right? And then like later on she's helpless to stop him from like just
spilling his guts onto the
just working like crazy and never taking a break.
writing like, oh, how do they put it? He's writing like there's no tomorrow.
Writing like he's running out of time.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yeah.
That's it.
And then like
Oh, that
also
just sounds like just the phrase sounds so much. Anyway,
and she says like that would be enough many times. Angelica is always using the word satisfied. Just all these like themes and short little phrases that all just come together.
well, did you notice like at the beginning too? Like, so there's people that play multiple characters, and like each of them kind of like the lines that they use of like, oh, I was the one who shot him. We loved him. There's one who said, I fought him.
Or I fought with him.
I fought with him.
But it was both, he played both Lafayette, who fought in the battle with him, but he also played Jefferson, who fought against him. So he fought him.
That
Interesting.
interesting.
So it's just fascinating. Like, clearly he put a lot of time and energy into this show.
And how the
Because it's like
characters are.
everything is like intertwined where you're just
Yeah.
like, I find it fascinating, like how watching like Lord of the Rings, where you can see like all these little things. I feel like rewatching Hamilton, you're like, oh, there's that thing and there's that thing, and there's like, oh, that ties to that, and you're like, oh my god.
Well,
Yeah.
and to your point, Abigail, I mean, the Eliza and Angelica are both talking about what is essentially the same thing, which is being happy with your life. And Eliza is a very simple person, a very simple character who just wants to live her life and have love and raise her children. And Angelica
And be loved.
And Angelica is more of an intellectual match to Hamilton, who treats things in terms of satisfaction. So for Eliza, she almost prefers the simplicity more, but Angelica wants to be satisfied. Like there is a hunger, there is ambition, and Eliza does not have hunger.
And Hamilton has way too much of it.
Yes.
He's got one thing I texted Kat was like that one of the biggest themes was lust for power, which Hamilton absolutely had.
Yeah. And it does like get him to the top and he achieves great things, but then it also almost destroys him.
Well,
It basically destroyed him.
It does destroy him. Yeah, you're right. More than almost.
Well, and
But-
this. Go ahead, John.
It's so like the thing that like I think Nick has brought up before in like other movies is that I think it's just so relatable. Like all of the, I mean, obviously it's
Yeah.
based on like real people, but like they're clearly flawed people, and it's very obvious what their flaws are. But like it's so relatable in different ways of like for each of the characters of like, yeah, I mean, Angela probably would have had a great relationship with Alexander, but like she had to, because there was no heir to her parents, that she had to like seek out a higher status. I mean, like she could have not to, but like given the times and the circumstance that she's in, she had to go the one way.
apparently that's one thing that was not historically accurate.
Oh, it wasn't?
So Philip Schuyler did actually have sons.
Oh,
But
well,
Lin-Manuel Miranda said he conveniently forgot that when he was writing.
oh, can we?
Oh, because wasn't there like a John Schuyler as well? He had a
Maybe.
son, John, or something.
I don't know.
But
Is he right here?
John Schuyler, ladies and gentlemen. You know what?
He is an old fart, so it's not the most unbelievable thing.
not quite that old.
I have to point out there's a really interesting distinction, but talking about like the characters and that hunger, right? And there's, Angelica and Hamilton are both people who have this hunger for being satisfied in their lives. But to me, that carries over then to Hamilton's relationship with Aaron Burr.
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron Burr is an opportunist.
Yeah.
And so he wants to get ahead. He wants all the things that Hamilton has. But the difference is that because he's not willing to play his cards and actually take the risk of putting himself out there for other people to read.
It's like he says, you don't talk too much and smile.
Yeah. And
Doesn't
that's,
get
Talk less, smile more.
Yeah, it doesn't get you much.
Well,
Yeah.
well, they're two sides of the same coin, right? They're both seeking the same thing, but they're just going about it completely different ways.
yeah, Burr is a
pretty
very
much.
defensive person in that sense. And when he actually does try to chase something, Hamilton ends up taking it
He
away
beats
from
him to it.
Yeah, Hamilton basically goes for the complete opposite side because he understands Jefferson's point of view.
Burr is defensive. Hamilton is offensive.
Yes,
But
Hamilton makes his
Sometimes
own
just
opportunities.
defensive.
Well,
I mean, yes.
I also
in more
feel
ways
like,
than one.
I think like Burr is more relatable than I would like to admit. Like just in the sense of like he's very patient. He's very like waiting his turn for things to come into place. Whereas Hamilton just like gung ho and just plows through whatever, and he always gets what he wants.
Yeah.
Whereas like Aaron Burr gets screwed over and over and over again by Hamilton because he's not willing to like plow forward.
Well, and it's a commentary, I think, on passivity, like political passivity, moral passivity, in the sense that if you don't speak out, if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to have a chance to actually bring people to your side or form connections. You'll form enemies, and Hamilton made a lot of enemies.
Yeah, he did.
In fact, that's the reason that that Burr ran, right, and ended up getting his Senate seat, was because
So many people didn't like Hamilton.
people didn't
Yeah.
like Hamilton. But at the end of the day, the musical puts that sort of offensive thinking, right, where you're willing to take the risk and put yourself out there more, puts it above the sense of passivity and soft-spokenness that Burr has throughout the whole musical, which Leslie Odom Jr. does such an amazing job at being this really suave politician. I mean,
But he's
Yeah.
never in the room where it happens.
no.
He always wants to be there.
Yeah.
Well,
His motivation though is like solely to be in the room where it happens. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't seem like he really has any like principles he's fighting for.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
Hamilton calls him on.
Yes.
When
multiple
Jefferson.
times.
Yeah,
Well,
because
and that's
he's like
actually, like,
Jefferson has
what-
principles, Burr does not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I partially disagree with that. He does. He's never willing to talk about them.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's
actually a
almost
thing.
like out of politeness, but I think it's more like his strategy.
It's
Yeah,
true.
because at the start of the musical, when Hamilton is meeting all of his buddies for the first time, he's getting to know them. Burr like basically quiets them all down and he says, "Look, I'm with you, but you got to play your cards close."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so he has principles. He has opinions. He's never willing to state them. And in Hamilton's mind, that makes him a more dangerous individual.
I can relate to that in more ways than I would like to admit. I'm not a super outspoken person.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, and this is not necessarily to downplay being guarded and close, because that has a certain benefit.
Yes, it does.
But at the same time, Burr's sort of closeness, his guardedness, is because he's an opportunist and he's looking for the opportunity to push himself forward.
He plays his cards strategically close.
Yes. Yeah. It's not a way of protecting himself. It is in that sense, it's a way of like, I want to like weasel my way up to the top. And so it is really interesting to see his character evolve, and especially how all of the relationships between the characters evolve as the story goes on. So yeah, there's so much.
There's a
to break
lot to
down in this.
dissect.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this movie.
Movie.
You wanted to mention about set design, John.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So
The rotating stage, like
So there's not
So
a lot
cool.
to the
Power.
stage. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, they're not like changing out a lot of different scenes. They're not doing like moving around a bunch of stuff, but the stuff that they have, they utilize very, very well.
Yes.
And especially the rotating
The,
stage and
the
stuff. like-
double rotating
Yes,
stage
yeah,
too.
Yes.
yeah.
I was like I was
It's
like,
got to take so much work for them to like, because they're like walking on this rotating stage so that they stay in the same spot, but they're walking like as the stage moves.
Well, and that takes such coordination when you think about the aspect of not just the cast and the crew have to understand when it's going to start moving so that they don't get thrown off. The crew also have to be like laser-eyed at that stuff. Because I imagine the people who are managing that turntable are the same people working lights, are the same people doing all of that. And one of my friends from college, actually, one of the friends who got super obsessed with Hamilton for a little while, and is maybe still and just hasn't told me. Shout out Hannah. But she did a lot of lighting design work as a part of her education, and even just getting a glimpse into that, it's just mind-boggling how complex that stuff is.
So, and they make it look so smooth. But
Yes.
one thing that's also like just the choreography in general that's kind of interesting is because like I listened to like a lot of different videos on it after I'd watched it, and apparently Alexander Hamilton always goes like directly to whatever like, straight at it, whereas Burr always goes like arcs to wherever he's going, because like just to like demonstrate their character.
that's a
and, like,
good
different-
observation.
Also, one thing that's also fascinating is the woman who plays who's the bullet who like hits Hamilton is like always the bullet for every single scene that has like a firing and somebody dying.
I did
She's
catch
always
that,
the one
yeah.
with the person dying.
Mm-hmm.
I did catch that.
but-
Yeah.
Interesting enough, this is actually accurate historical information that they do say in there is that his son died with exactly the same pistols that he used in his duel that he died in, and they died on the same field.
Yeah.
Huh.
Or
yeah.
like they got shot in the same field. It's like, how do you not like, I get like back then, like, and I think a struggle for like a lot of different cultures is like honor is a very like important thing for them. And it's like, how do you not see that like you made a huge mistake with like having your son go in a duel and go to the exact same field with the exact same guns and not expecting a different outcome?
It's like trying the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result.
The definition of insanity. Yeah.
but it's just like clearly like that's the greatest flaw is that he just like values his honor over anything else.
He values his legacy.
Legacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then at the very end, I love his his monologue like shortly before.
Oh,
duel,
yeah.
when he kind of comes to terms with like what is his legacy. He's like, what if this bullet is my legacy? What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden we never get to see.
Like a soliloquy kind of.
Yeah, soliloquy. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I get like that slam poetry vibe. It was really cool. It was really cool.
The soliloquy brings together a lot of the themes of the show, though, I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, in Les Mis, when Valjean and Javert have their soliloquies, like
Mhm.
it serves the same purpose,
Well,
more or less.
yeah, it's basically the resolution of his character, right? And actually, that's why I really like the fact that It's Quiet Uptown is, to me, It's Quiet Uptown is the resolution to his character arc. It's not the resolution to Eliza, because she actually ends the show, but it's the resolution to his character because it's when he finally recognizes what's important to him in terms of finding love in his life. But obviously at the end of the day, he is still flawed enough to throw away his shot like that. Because he doesn't want to hurt Burr, and Burr just is like ready to shoot him. I like that this musical doesn't end with another overture on Hamilton. When I was
like
when I was listening, like a reprise. When I was listening to this, I got to the end of that last track, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story, and it actually looped around to the start again. And I legit thought, I actually listened to the full first song again because it felt like traditionally in a musical, that's what you would end with, is the restatement of the thesis. But at the end of the day, they choose not to end it with this big fanfare about Hamilton again. It's about Eliza, and it's about her, not just her preservation of his legacy, but how she came around to that from removing herself from the story to protect her privacy and to protect that very intimate part of her life that she decided to remove in order to exercise her agency. And so the fact that this almost becomes Eliza's story more than it does Hamilton's is just such a great subversion of classic construction of a musical. And I really like that it ends not with a bang, but with this sort of solemn statement of what was his legacy and who was around to tell
ends
a
in
story.
a fade out.
Yeah, it ends in a fade. It's fantastic.
Well, I find it fascinating that it's almost like this show is somewhat of like a tragedy.
Yeah,
right?
It really
Like how
is.
it ends.
that's a
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's
It's
a great way to
definitely
put
a
it.
tragedy.
Because the
It's a
thing
very
is like
upbeat tragedy.
Yeah.
if there was like one you could say fully honorable character in the show, it was Eliza.
Oh, 100%.
Like, because she is
Yeah.
very caring, and like even like Angela's whole point was like she's the most caring,
Angelica?
loving person.
You said Angela. It's okay.
Oh, Angelica,
You're
sorry.
right. But
yes, sorry. But like she's saying that she's her sister is the most caring, loving person she knows.
yeah.
And she kind of got screwed by like Hamilton caring more about his honor than caring about her.
Caring more about his legacy
Yeah, legacy.
than about
well,
his
and
marriage.
and in death, in the end, she decided that she finally recognized. Well, not maybe not finally. I think she always recognized it, but she makes the decision to make her life's work about what he did and the effect that that had on the formation of the country, which is like it is her decision to do that, to put herself back in the narrative as someone who decided to serve in that role of preserving his work, because she lobbied even to like the end of her life. She was lobbying to get his material like saved by like officially published by Congress, put in the Library of Congress. You know, working with one of her and Hamilton's sons to get his biography published, which was later then analyzed and released in the 2004 biography, which became the inspiration for the musical. There's just a lot that went on with her after his death, and of course, he felt like he never had enough time. But they make this really interesting note about God gave her the time that her husband wanted. And so she lived a full 50 years.
Yeah.
She lived a full life.
Yeah, full 50 years after he died.
Well, what's also fascinating, like I just was thinking about too, was how George Washington kind of did like what Hamilton should have done, where he like retired and it's like, I'm gonna go live with my family. I'm gonna go like live that up.
That depends on how you feel about it. I mean, Washington was concerned because basically every government in history up to that point was essentially you become ruler, you rule for life.
Well, yeah, that's what like King George was talking about. Like, Washington stepped down. Why would he do that?
And
I
in
didn't
fact,
realize that was something a person could do.
Yeah. and in fact, even in Rome, the whole model was that the emperor was supposed to be a random citizen who, in time of war, was called upon to become the leader and then would go back to whatever they used to do after the war was over. Now, obviously, they didn't stick to that. But, Washington is concerned about telling the people, yes, this country that we've built is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. And by saying goodbye in the way that I can, I set the model for a peaceful transition of power that is in this new form of government. We're going to show the world that this can work. Now, over 200 years later, things are interesting.
That's a word for it.
Well,
That's the Minnesotan word for it.
One thing I would say
Touche.
that like I do find fascinating that like I feel like there's a lot of mudslinging and like a lot of like craziness in politics nowadays.
Yeah.
And like
There's always been.
what I think I realized with like watching this was like, no, it was always that way.
Yeah.
There's always backstabbing. There's always like mudslinging, and you're just like, why is that?
This is why. This is
Like,
why
why can't we-
This is why I never became a politician,
Yeah.
and why I never will be.
Well, and especially in today's world, like career politicians have essentially become the kind of de facto replacement for lifetime rulers for life. Is you now just have people whose job it is over half the time. And I'm thinking more specifically of our Congress people and those sort of legislative positions of government, because we've already established, hey, your executive ruler has a 4-year term, max 2 terms. But for whatever reason, we didn't put that on the Congress people, the people that are supposed to be the voice. And then these Congress people spend a significant amount of their time. If you ever do any research about this, it's really interesting. They spend a significant amount of their time lobbying and basically trying to campaign in preparation for the next election. That is a significant part of their job, is to basically make that their career, literally make that their life. So we don't have rulers for life in this country. We have legislators and lawmakers for life, which a lot of people aren't okay with at this point. That's actually a lot of the unrest that's been going on lately is around that fact that we have people who spend so much time in office. I can think of recent examples, even in Illinois, where I grew up, of that being the case, and they're not governors or even lieutenant governors or vice presidents or presidents. They are the people in the legislative branch. And so we've kind of traded one thing for another, weirdly.
We live in a really weird age right now, especially politically.
Yeah, I feel like we always have, and this is just the particular challenge that our generation, our time has been stuck with. So it's always going to happen, I think, in one form or another.
Well, and like it goes to show, like, even in this musical of just like, yeah, I mean, they're just people who try to come up with a government that was like the most free. It doesn't mean like it's perfect by any stretch. There's a lot of issues with it, but like it worked out pretty well. But I think, I mean, I don't think it goes too much to say that like we do live in like one of the freest countries in the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
agreed.
I think that is something.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that they
Agreed.
There we go. That's a good call. Good call.
And I'm glad
plus
that
one board point. You get plus one board point.
Yes.
I'm glad that they stuck it to the King George.
Yeah. And it's stuck to you too. You're still banned from touching that.
Oh, okay.
Just be clear. Abigail, did you have any other notes that you wanted to discuss? Otherwise, I kind of think you should be the first to give your final thoughts.
You're
your
the guest. You get to be the first.
Okay, so I guess one other interesting note I had was the whole like affair scene.
Uh,
I guess kind of surprised it didn't come up at all, but like I don't know. It's just, I mean, not that it was like a fun scene to watch or anything. I'm like, this is painful.
Ooh,
I
an
don't wanna-
affair.
I don't want to
Cool.
watch. I don't want to watch this, but like
yeah. Yep.
it's very much like shows like how temptation goes. It doesn't even have to be that, you know, it's like anything. It's like he's just like he's exhausted. He's like alone. He's kind of like
Pursuing power. Like
pursuing power.
that's a temptation in and of itself.
And then it's just like he's just like so weak at that point. He's like, I don't even know how to say no. And I don't know. I mean, not that
And basically I mean, granted, it was more than once, but like that mistake, like cost him his
Multiplied.
entire career.
yeah.
Well,
And on top of that, him just like being ridiculous and like telling everybody in the world rather than just. But
Yeah, I still
Yeah.
don't get that.
so
it was where his priorities lie, and he's like, "Oh, I want to really make sure that people know that I wasn't
breaking the law.
breaking the law."
So yeah.
That's
so here's the thing.
really
It's just like-
arrogant.
It didn't kill his career. The whole point of this was to save his career. And
Yeah.
he did that, but he basically he traded his personal reputation for his professional reputation.
Yeah.
And poor Eliza, like,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
This is why she was the standout in the show, because she went through so much crap
Yeah.
and still came out strong.
And like also like the fact that she forgave him too is pretty incredible.
Yeah, because it wasn't just like he cheated on her, but he told everybody in the entire world
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he did.
Well, and that's why she made the decision to remove herself from that, because he basically let the whole world into their bedroom.
Yeah.
Because he actually points out a lot of the visits for the affair were at his own house, right? presumably in
And
his and Eliza's
she
bedroom.
wasn't even aware of this until she like read about it.
Yeah.
Like,
So he didn't tell her first. You know, the one thing that was interesting about Say No to This, that particular track, is the way it's written very much comes from Alexander's point of view retelling it. And so because of the stress he's under, if it ever seems like watching that song in the middle of the rest of this musical feels like one weird fever dream, it's because that's kind of how it's meant to be. It's meant to be from his perspective, at least from what I gather of, you know, he is incredibly stressed out. He's very, very tired. And this is just like this alluring thing that draws him. And it's very, very cringy to watch.
Yeah.
But I think that's intentional.
Well, it would be weird if it like romanticized it, right? Like it's just like
It's
supposed
written-
to be.
it's
I
written
would-
kind of in a weird
My
romantic-
respect for Lynn would drop if he romanticized it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, you know, Eliza, you know, knew Hamilton well enough that he needed a vacation. And and of course, he doesn't go on the vacation. This will happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's one of those things that's like it seems so sad because like she's just like, you were in the war, like you started a country, just take a break. And like he just can't. It's almost like he never knows how to take a break because he can't.
You never learn
Until
to take
his
your
like-
time.
Yeah. And
He
it's just
was-
like when you're always like trying to get the upper end
He's
your
like
entire life.
he's bad at time management, but in like the opposite direction. Some people are bad with time management and they can't get work done. He's bad with time management, but it's all work, right? He's just all in all the time.
Well, there's still a thing of the work-life balance, right? Clearly,
not-
he's all work.
I don't think the job description for building the United States of America included a good work-life.
workaholic.
Yeah.
But I think it does say something that like he is an orphan. Like he never had his dad there to like teach him how like to have that work-life balance, or like his mom died when he was young.
Yeah.
Of like this is where he found worth, was like in his work.
Yeah. Both he and Burr were orphans. And you know, it also paints how amoral in some sense Burr was. Right. Because he's having an affair essentially with a woman who's married to a British officer.
So he does the same thing in a way that Hamilton does, but he doesn't get as like,
he doesn't get the blowback, right, necessarily. But I can't remember exactly how it worked in the sense that there's like a somewhat of a turn of phrase on the We Know song where at the very end of it, Hamilton's asking Burr if Burr's going to ever use this against him. And Burr simply says, we both know what we know. We both know what we know, which is to say Hamilton at his wedding has the discussion with Burr about Burr's affair, essentially. I mean, I can't remember if he was married at the time, but they don't
think
mention
Burr
that.
was.
Yeah, they don't mention whether he was or not. But yeah, they both know each other's dirt, basically.
So would you like? It's just fascinating that like. Do you think that Burr told people, or do you think it was like in the story of the, or like in this story versus like real life? I don't know exactly.
It doesn't
but like
matter because there was the accusations about embezzlement came from a reporter who basically did the same digging that Monroe and a few others did when they confronted him. And so this person basically found the same thing and accused him of the same thing in a public forum. And so Hamilton came out with the Reynolds pamphlet to publicly preserve his image, as opposed to previously when it had been a more private confrontation. So apparently Monroe was the only one who did not apologize for the whole thing. And it basically took Eliza sitting down with him shortly before Hamilton died to like clear all of that up. It was a very curious case. I can't necessarily cite sources for that. Wikipedia is a powerful thing, but
Most reliable source on the internet.
most reliable. You can believe everything on the internet, but that's the gist of what I understand of it. Was that this was? I don't think Monroe necessarily said anything, but it was this reporter doing the same digging that forced Hamilton to kind of reveal what was going on. So, yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Does that lead us into our final thoughts?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you want to start, Abigail?
Oh, I don't necessarily have anything prepared for like final thoughts.
That's
Just
okay.
Just riff.
Okay, I mean,
You have to do it in rhyme and with the beat.
no, I can't do that.
That'd be so hard that all of us have to do our like score and review in a rhyme.
Hey, I tried to give us the intro.
Hey, if you
Hey, you did, you
given me
did.
some time to prepare.
Your beat was much better than mine because
Exactly,
I was
yeah.
not expecting.
We could prepare for this, but we're not going to.
All right. So you want me to give my score?
Yeah. Out of 100.
Okay, I'm gonna say 95. I do really
All
enjoy
right.
this.
All right. Yeah, that's a good score. Just kind of the basic motivation for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's some things that are like that I don't care for as much. Like, there's a lot of language and stuff, which just kind of go along with it being like hip hop.
Surprisingly more F-bombs than I was expecting.
So,
Yeah.
So I do find this kind of interesting. Like at the time, I think people like if you go back and read like stuff that like Hamilton or like the other people were like sending about each other would have been like probably the equivalent of the F word now, like back then. So it's like it does fit, but like yeah, I would agree.
So in the like Disney Plus recording, there are less F bombs than in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to make it PG-13.
Yeah.
They couldn't exceed the
So-
one
That
F-bomb
is
limit.
that is such a Disney thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that aside, I just think it's really
Even the subtitles. Like there's maybe one time you see the F-bomb and otherwise it's just F asterisk asterisk
yeah.
asterisk.
But that aside, I still really enjoy it for all the reasons we've talked about. And the songs are just catchy.
Yep.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed.
I was wondering if you were going to do that.
Took me a second. Sorry. I'm rusty.
I can go next.
John, go for it.
I really liked this. I don't know. I didn't know quite. I mean, I'd heard the soundtrack, but like I wasn't expecting like all of the filming of it and like the different stage work and the choreography that was like just a whole nother level. And like I was saying, like I really appreciate movies that I can go back and see like finer details and like how much effort was put into it. Clearly, I'm gonna go with a 93 because like I also agree there's definitely. Probably didn't need to be as much swearing and like some kind of like adult content and it, like it would be hard to show to a kid. I feel like. So
You know, I of course, you know, Nick and I, pretty much all of us have really interesting relationships with this particular musical. And I think, especially when I talk about the production, the recording of it, if I were to imagine a theatrical, because you mentioned like the set doesn't change very much, you know, and that to me speaks to just how engaging the characters themselves are, the characters and the acting.
yes,
Like they absolutely struck lightning. Like lightning struck lightning is not the phrase. Lightning struck with this cast. It all came together. The filming is everything that I could ever dream a filming of a Broadway musical to look like, or any musical for that matter. It just absolutely hits on every note. Lin-Manuel Miranda made history cool.
mm-hmm.
You know, I
That's
like
fair.
growing up in high school, right? You always had those YouTube videos that your history teacher would like to share because they were
and you're
cool.
like, do you know about Alexander Hamilton?
Yeah, like I had a one history teacher. I can't exactly remember who. Might have been. I can't remember exactly who. But they showed me this parody of like early 2000s pop song that was it was a Spice Girls song, but it was about the bubonic plague
Oh,
and about fleas on rats. And
that's
like
a jarring combination.
that was like their look, modern, hip, cool, like I'm
Yeah.
down, like r/fellow kids kind of moment. And I think really Lin-Manuel Miranda brings history alive in a way that you seldom see. And I feel like there are so many other moments in history, especially American history, that deserve that level of charm and like creative respect, where he clearly wrote this with such intelligence and such understanding of like the themes he wanted to portray and the stories he wanted to tell. Every line of this is so intentional. Not a bar is wasted. Not a bar of it. It's the whole thing is immaculate. Yes, I wish there was less language. I'll dock at a point for that. As a performance, I got to give it a 97.
Wow.
Your score is higher than mine.
That's impressive.
I think it's phenomenal.
That is
I
impressive
kinda,
for Seth.
After your description, I almost kind of would have raised mine up, but I did already say it. But I was initially thinking like anyway. But you're right. No, you're definitely right. Like he's very intentional with every word.
It is a perfect modern musical.
It's very well done.
Well,
we all know that Nick is gonna like flip the script and he's gonna do the lowest score.
We're so
I'm pretty
flipped.
so I am, so I absolutely am going to give this the lowest score. Not that it's like egregiously low, but it is the lowest score. I give it an 89.
Wow.
Okay.
I thought you were going to go lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I didn't really have any expectations.
Mhm.
I was sort of expecting not to love it. Which I liked it more than I thought I was going to.
Okay.
It's not my favorite musical of all time. It's never going to be.
Yeah.
I don't love hip hop in general.
Okay.
Like I think some hip hop is really good. I find this style with this story a little jarring.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the best way I could describe it was the music was a little distracting from the story it was trying to tell.
Okay.
Okay.
Like it worked in some parts, but in a lot of ways
Like for instance, it's almost so fast it's like hard to catch everything.
yeah,
Yes.
that and like I'm just like I don't know. There was just a disconnect there that I'm just like this doesn't really sell it for me, but I was invested in the story. It is very well done. It is very well done. And and I will agree that it is Lin-Manuel Miranda's best work, but I still think he is overrated. And I do feel like I still don't know how I feel about him writing this musical specifically for him to be in the starring role. Like I just there's a little morality thing in me that's just like it makes me really uncomfortable.
That's fair. That's fair.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm kind of with you on the hip hop thing. It does get really jarring. I think what I almost appreciate it out of principle because I have a hard time finding the meaning in hip hop that apparently is there that I don't really have the ability to appreciate it. And I'm sure part of that has to do with socioeconomics, whatever.
Yeah, cultural.
But even like when I try and put myself in those shoes to understand it from that perspective, I still find it lacking. This is like a great fusion of like, from what I understand to be quality hip hop aesthetic musically, with actual deep topics and good character writing.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but that's
Yeah.
all. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and I will agree. It's very well written, very well executed. It's just to me, it's no Les Mis or West Side Story.
Yeah,
Like,
I would put Les
West
Mis-
Side. Well,
the thing is,
West
like-
Side Story will forever. Well, unless something comes along that tops it, it is as of now. West Side Story is as of now my favorite musical of all time, like unquestionably.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because like I do think the story of Les Mis I like more, but like the singing, you can tell like the people in this one are like definitely Broadway actors besides Randa,
Right.
But like, but clearly in Les Mis they're like these are Hollywood actors
In the movie, which is why it was
Yeah,
amazing to
yep.
see it performed because they were like, I guess, West End actors.
Oh, okay, yeah,
And they were amazing.
because Russell Crowe could anyway.
He could use some work. That's
Anyway.
we'll save that for another day. But anyway, the final score comes out to a a 93.5, which rounds up to a 94.
Oh, I don't have the exact average. I should have gone up a point.
Yeah, that's a good score though.
Yeah, I think that's very appropriate.
Yeah. So thank you, Nick, John, Abigail. Thank you for being with us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. Really appreciate having you here. It was really cool when you suggested this.
You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. If actually, this is a fun question. If you were to do another movie, what would it be?
Ooh.
I haven't. Well, okay. I want to do one of the Lord of the Rings when you guys get around
That's
to that.
right. Yeah.
Isn't that how we're going to kick off next year?
To me, it could be next. It's either going to be next year, but I have made the resolution that before this podcast, ends, right? Because naturally things will draw to a close at some point. But before this ends, we are doing Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I do not care what arm I have to cut off to do it.
We just take an entire weekend and just record all.
We should actually do a Lord of the Rings marathon and then
No.
a 4-hour.
Nope.
That would be such a long
I
day.
can only do so much.
Yeah.
That's true. Thank you. So thank you all for being here. Thanks, Abigail, for joining us. This is a lot of fun. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Genesius podcast. If you enjoyed our content and want to see or hear more from us, please subscribe to our podcast on whatever podcasting platform you use. You can find us on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, and more. You can also find us on YouTube proper. Our handle is @Genesius Podcast if you want to see the video that we put up for whatever reason. Yeah, for whatever reason, our lights are flickering today. Let's see. Yeah, and so our handle is @Genesius Podcast on YouTube, where you can see all of the shenanigans we get up to, as well as some pretty cool Lego sets that actually there are some in the background over on the far side of.
I
frame
love
there.
that San Francisco one.
Yeah,
That
it's,
one.
it's really cool.
The way that Golden Gate Bridge is constructed is quite cool.
Yeah, I got Kyle the New York one for his birthday.
That's a cool one too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty neat.
yeah, that's pretty neat.
Anyway, if you would like us to talk about a movie you enjoy or a movie related topic you'd like us to discuss here on the Genesius podcast, if you want to provide feedback to make our show even better, or if you just want us to pray for you for any reason, send us an email at genesiuspodcast@gmail.com. That's GENESIUS podcast@gmail.com.
I almost started laying down a beat for you.
Oh, you should have rolled with it.
I should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's gone.
Oh, anyway. Additionally, if you'd like to make an appearance on our show as a guest, like Abigail here, make sure you know one of us three personally, and make sure you've listened to one of our episodes. And if you've made it this far, good job. You're halfway there. Unless you just skipped ahead to this part just to say you did. That's an interesting
That's
choice.
really genius, actually.
Okay.
Anyway, make sure to reach out to one of us three directly or send us an email at genesiuspodcast@gmail.com.
Some galaxy brain stuff.
Finally, please spread the word about the Genesius podcast, whether it be on social media or word of mouth. If you're listening, turn to whoever you're in proximity to.
Hey, Nick,
Hey, Seth.
have you heard about the Genesius podcast?
I don't know if I have. What is it?
It's 3 Catholic dudes plus a guest sometimes talk about movies and sometimes stage productions. It's really kind of like a not well-defined show.
It's whatever they want to do.
Yeah, it's whatever we
really.
want to do. I don't know why.
Are you
he's
saying
here.
there's no structure?
I mean, there's structure, right? But it's like kind of thing.
Sign me up.
All right, that sounds good.
Or should you text to all your friends, family, and coworkers about our podcast, whether it be right at this moment, at a family dinner, at a work meeting, or on date night.
Hey, I apologize.
I don't know if I'm going on a date night with Nick.
I'm trying to mix up. Here.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please tell them about us, and please pray for us as we continue to create content and give our gifts to give glory to God.
We use our gifts to give glory to God.
Yes. I wanted to add another G in there for some reason.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of G's for you.
Perfect. Those were all like the hard G's, though, right? Not the soft one.
It's not J.
Is it GIF or GIF?
GIF.
John,
Yeah, gift.
Abigail.
Whatever I feel like at the moment.
Ooh,
Ooh.
that's
There's only one correct answer.
That's a hot take. All right, prayer intentions for the week here. What do we got?
Well, for our country and for politicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all
I
those
mean,
in public office.
when this releases, 4th of July will be just around the corner.
And
That's a really good intention, actually.
Yeah.
For those who serve our country, both in public office and in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really great intention. Who would like to lead us?
John, would you like to lead us in prayer?
Okay. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thank you, Lord, for the gift of freedom that we have in this country, for all the founding fathers and those who serve in office, as well as for all those who served in military, and especially those who gave their life for us. And we pray this in your name, our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Saint Genesius,
Pray for us.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. John, thank you for that prayer. John,
Yeah.
thank you for the prayer.
Take it.
You're welcome.
Earth to John. Earth to John. Don't throw away your shot.
Ooh, nice. Abigail, thank you again for joining us
Yeah, thanks
this
for
week on the
having me.
Genesius podcast. Like I said, you're welcome back anytime. Seth and John, thank you as always for joining me.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Nick,
thank you.
for joining us.
Yeah.
I was
We
gonna
gotta
say,
host
I was
this
gonna
time.
say you hosted this time.
Absolutely.
And thank you, viewers and listeners.
What was that?
That's the monitor. Ignore it. We're still recording
Oh,
on the camera.
Okay. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in with us. Tune in next week to hear our take on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It will come out Friday at noon. But until then, we are the Genesius guys. I'm Nick.
Filling in for Kyle. I'm Seth.
I'm John.
And I'm Abigail.
And this is the Genesius podcast. God bless.